thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. This is a Taylor. I'm sure you had a chance to reread this, and this was a probably. This was a really challenging story for me. It's my oldest story in the book because it was the first story that I wrote, first official short story that I wrote. So let me just do the intro for people who are joining us. So we do this every Sunday at 10 o'clock. It's Wildflowers Live, and it's an idea that I had shortly after my book came out to do a live stream every Sunday with Taylor and friends, in which we would read excerpts from a particular story and then just talk about the broader themes. And so that's what we're doing today with the story Mother's Day. Now, if you have not purchased my book yet, the best way to purchase it is on my Carrie keeps getting kicked out. The best way to purchase my book is on my website, Patti Lucia Writes. That's Patti with an I, PattiLuciaWrites.com. The book is Wildflowers and Present Tenses. And if you go on my website, you can get up to 25% off. So I do encourage people to do that because it is much cheaper than Amazon or Barnes and Noble or any of these other places online, unless you're getting an electronic. If you're getting an ebook, that's the cheapest way to go. But if you'd like the hard copy, which I think is lovely, go on my website, and that's the most economical way to get it. And if you get the personalized edition, then I will hand sign a personalized message to you on the inside cover, say some, sweet, lovely things to you in my hand on the inside cover, and bless the book. And of course, thank you for supporting it. So that is that for introductions. I mean, I've got a few other announcements, but I really want to save them for the end of the show. I kind of wanted to jump into this. I want to introduce my co-host, who I am eternally grateful for, Taylor Callahan, my soul sister, my spirit daughter, my someone who I think I've traveled through eons with, on a soul to soul basis. So it's this really wonderful experience when you are traveling through your life and you meet up with ancient friends and family who have also been looking for you. And so that is my experience with Taylor, and of course with the Noki, and with others, they know who they are. And so Taylor, I'm sorry, I rambled a little bit there, but I'm just feeling the love this morning.
Mushy.
I'm mushy. I'm almost as hormonal as you are, and you're pregnant.
You can ramble.
We like to say, Patti and I, that we are old as dirt, older than bones, older than bones. Our souls are old.
Yes, I
agree.
Ashley has sent us a lovely little note, and I am responding to her. Ashley,
thank you so much for joining us on Sundays.
We love you, Ashley. And anytime, come join us in Zoom, or
come on, girl.
Come on, girl. Come on now. Come on.
Do our shows.
So did you want to say anything more, Taylor, before we?
I'm always happy to be here. It's a blessing to spend my Sundays with these beautiful individuals here. I'm excited today because my cousin has joined us.
I'm excited about that too.
I thought that this was a good episode to drag her in on. I think that we all have some dad stories, some Mother's Day stories, and yours, Patti, is quite touching. So without further ado, if you would like to jump in on the crown.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this for the last few days, and it's really hard for me to even approach this story without being without being emotional to this day, and for a lot of reasons, and we'll get into that. But I was rereading it, you know, not just scanning it or skimming it, but like rereading it this morning, and I couldn't get through the story without getting really emotional. It's I got emotional at at the point in the story where the point of view switches from third person to first person, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But as many of you know, if you have the book or if you've been following along our live streams, you know that the structure of this book is that this overarching narrator is a crone, and the crone is my future self. So she introduces each story from the perspective of being much further on down the road, wiser, wilder, and with a different perspective. So I always like to start by sharing how the crone has introduced each story. So this is how the crone introduces Mother's Day, and then we'll jump into it.
The Crown is my favorite.
And the fairies. Can't forget the
And,
fairies.
well, of course.
Duh. Um, I wrote my first story when my mother died. Let me start again. I wrote my first story when my father died, says the crone. The irony of his death on Mother's Day tapped on my shoulder until I picked up my pen. She puts a flower from her garden on the stump next to her. A fairy picks a petal and throws it in the fire. I thought that writing the story from a third person perspective would give me distance, but I cried all the way through the writing of it. I didn't cry because I missed my father. I cried for the father I missed my whole life, the father I never had, and yet I was still his. The fairies lay down on their logs. Sad stories make them sleepy.
And I want to add that we discussed in a story prior to this one that you really tried to have a relationship with your father. Oftentimes, you were the one that went and did the little side jobs, and although you were the tough girl, you were the tomboy of the clan, and even so, you went with him when the boys didn't to go do his odd jobs and just really looked for acceptance from Albert.
Mhm.
And I think that no matter how much that hurt that you never got the full spectrum of his love, how he left was still very traumatic
Mhm.
because you were all kind of hanging, waiting, for that phone call,
Mhm.
for that interaction with this changed man,
Mhm.
um, as he had come to be. We always
Mhm.
learn in our elder years the fault of our ways, hopefully.
Yeah,
But in Albert's case, I think he tried.
yeah, I mean, he had started changing in his later years, but I was long gone, you know. I was living in New York. I had a very different life, came home less and less, and so I wasn't really there to benefit from the changes that he was making later in his life.
Yeah.
So my memories, unfortunately, are mostly of the childhood trauma, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So where do you want to begin, Taylor? Let's jump into this.
Um,
I mean,
so
so the premise.
essentially,
Well, let me just say the premise. We're going to jump into this, but the premise of the story is that my father died on Mother's Day morning, and that was that was kind of freaky in and of itself. And there was a bit of irony in that it was, he was not, he what historically was not good, particularly to the women in his life, you know, like to his wife, to, to his, maybe his female, well, I can't really speak for my other sisters, but he wasn't really a champion of, holding women in high regard. And so to die on Mother's Day morning was kind of had a certain kind of sad irony for all of us. So
And I assume that, I don't know, I've never really heard you talk about your grandfathers, but I assume that that was a learned behavior.
my
That's
father
how
is,
he was raised. And so,
yeah, my father was, I mean, have you seen The Godfather? Like, did you watch The Godfather? No, honestly, it's like old school Italian, like almost fresh off the boat from Italy. All right. So
yeah,
my father was born in this country, but his older brother was, there were eight or nine in their family. So one brother was born in Italy and the rest of them were born in the United States, but like they were fresh. They were part of kind of like a mass immigration from Italy during that time. And so yeah, my father was born here, but they only knew Italian. They were Italian immigrants, and so that was, that's the culture that they brought. That's the culture that he knew, and it was really, really old school. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So, and I mean, I'm not kidding. It was like I watched The Godfather, and I was like, oh, geez, this looks familiar.
This is, yeah.
This looks fucking
Tell me.
familiar. Yeah.
I want to mention that the way that you start this in particular story in the first chapter is kind of this foreshadowing to how he was living
Mhm.
on this day, and it really was an intriguing setting to go into. I don't want to say I enjoyed it, but it really put me in that moment of waiting for his toast to pop. I could smell the toast. Um, you could really feel the way that he was sitting on the couch,
Mhm.
the energy that he was holding, waiting for this day to begin because he had a list of things to do that he never got to.
Mhm.
And so I agree, there's a very sad irony in that, but I wanted to comment on the way that you open that. I think that it's beautiful and sad all at one time.
In the
Uh,
process, the process of knowing exactly how this unfolded was that I had to have these really difficult conversations with family members who, had the details, for instance, of when he was found, how he was found,
yeah,
what that was like. So I knew his hands were folded and his legs were crossed, because that's exactly how they found him the next
yeah,
day. So he was literally, and the toast was still in the toaster, and the clothes were laid out on the bed. You know what I mean? Like that was how he was found. So it was easy to kind of walk backwards in his mourning from that. Yeah.
and there's such a lesson in that. You have all these emotions in regards to who he was as a man, but here he was trying. He was
Mm.
getting his things ready to do this day and make the
Mhm.
best of it, and
Mhm.
that's a lesson for everyone.
Mhm.
Do the
Yeah.
most every day and give the most of yourself every day, because you don't know what day
Mhm.
that you won't make it to the end of.
Absolutely.
So I just want to take a clip out of that. uh I don't know where, if I start in the beginning, because
Yeah.
essentially, I'm just going to start here where he
Sure.
placed two slices of Wonder Bread. He placed two slices of Wonder Bread into the toaster, pushed down the lever, and turned on the radio to his favorite Christian station. At 11 a.m., James Dobson's Focus on Family, the only talk show Albert listened to, would air. Today, Dobson would speak about the most important woman in a man's life, the mother of his children and the keeper of his home. Albert laid out a crisp white shirt and creased pants,
and sat down to wait for his toast to pop. In recent years, this particular day had become one of the most important days of the year for Albert, a day he could show that a man can change. It was Mother's Day. Albert looked forward to a full day. He had lunch date with Eunice, a lady friend he met at the senior center. 72 years old, Eunice was small and frail with kind blue eyes behind her bifocals. She kept her thick white hair in a no-nonsense cut. Eunice was, in most ways, a no-nonsense woman, a retired English teacher. Eunice was well-read, quick-witted, and independent. And so she had taken on the role of being his lady friend, and was kind of present for your father in a way that your mother was incapable of doing at this juncture due to, I assume, the history, and remarried. And so he was able to have this relationship that I'm sure he was very grateful for in his last days.
Yeah.
He had plans to do quite a few things that day. And so you kind of foreshadow that. And then we discussed how we got to where we got to how you felt as a child and those stories. And I think that, like I said, I think that we all have something in our early days. But for you, you were the one, Patti. You were the one that put your foot down and said, no, I'm not going to go about this silently. I'm going to speak up for my mother. I'm going to speak on this abuse. I'm going to be the one that runs to the neighbors. I'm going to be the one that stands there and tells him, I'm calling the cops. But you were also the one that helped him, make up his fault to your mother. And I found that interesting, describing you as an individual. I think that suits you well. That though you were the first one of the children, of 5 children, to say, hey, wait a minute, this is wrong. You were also the first one to help.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Something just happened to your sound. Yeah, something just happened to your sound. What's going on with your sound? There you go.
Am I better?
Yeah, much. Yeah, you're a little, your feed is a little wobbly this morning. Yeah, just a little.
I wonder why. There's like 17 young boys on the internet all at once.
So, but anyway, you were talking about kind of like the history, and I think what you're referring to is probably the event in this story that is that I write about that is probably the most traumatic event of my childhood. That
Yes.
really kind of left its mark on me for a very long. It's still, I don't think I'll ever rub that mark out. But it was the that fateful night in that New Year's Eve when I was 11. That was the event that kind of I mean, there had been trauma before that, but that was really that I believe had the biggest impact. Yeah. So I still can't hear you, by the way.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. So did you want to get into that?
Pretty intense moment. I'm going to read a little bit into that.
Okay.
Shirley divorced Albert in 1977 after her daughter, Patricia, speaking for the 5 children, had begged her to. Shirley, a devout Catholic, had waited a long time and endured more than even Albert could have expected. Their marriage crumbled years before the divorce, with Albert's family living on eggshells, tiptoeing around his bitterness and rage. And on the afternoon Patricia begged her mother to leave, she had found her mother in the basement, weeping over her sewing machine, her tears blotting the cloth beneath the needle. Albert drank and became irrational and violent. He had an 8th grade education and painted houses for a living. He was self-employed and ran his own company, but as the economy in Massachusetts declined, so did Albert. In the end, he turned his rage on his wife. On New Year's Eve, 1972, Albert, high on alcohol and tranquilizers, took Shirley home from a relative's party and beat her until she lost consciousness. Shirley managed to crawl into her son's room and into a lower bunk where her youngest son shivered. She stayed there for a week. In the hushed days that followed, Diana and Barbara brought her soup and aspirin and helped keep her steady when she would begin to walk again. Patricia cleaned her mother's blood off the kitchen floor from the dent from the dent made by her head in the living room wall. She had never entered the room where her mother lay. Instead, Patricia assisted her father in renovating the bathroom. Albert's apology. Sensing the urgency in such an apology, she exerted every bit of her 11-year-old strength in cleaning, hammering, lifting, and measuring his apology. So there's a lot to unload. There was a lot happening. There was a lot of domestic violence. And I'll just touch on the fact that I think back then it was a lot more accepted. I think in today's world, it's more of a hushed event. It was like openly, yeah, I beat my wife, like it wasn't, when you went to the cops in a story prior, the cops visibly see marks on your mother. The cop looked at you and said, you need to go home.
Yeah.
You need to do what your father said. Have a great day.
Yeah.
And so even the
Yeah.
police were lackadaisical in handling these issues.
Yeah.
It was,
Domestic issues. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which is traumatizing, even more so because you go for help and
Yeah.
and
And
it's instead normalized and shoved back in your face.
right. So there, and I imagine that was very much how my mother felt, so that she kind of had no real escape.
As the mother, it would make me feel fearful. Yeah, I mean, you had better stay in your place because there was nobody that's going to save you from that situation.
Right. And how do you protect your children too, in that situation? So,
well, reading that reminded me of a story that traumatized my mother. And it's a story that my cousin and I have both heard. My grandfather was a football coach and he was very well known in town and prominent individual. And my grandmother, whose name was also Shirley, was the housewife and, took care of 3 young children. And albeit they were both alcoholics, a memory that I have been, has been retold to me is that he put my grandmother, through a wall, like completely through a wall. And that my mother held, her brothers in a closet and hid the entire time. And once again, the cops were never called. There was never, anything, nothing came from that altercation. So in the 70s, it was just so, which is really sad, but it does seem like your generation really had to just grin and bear that.
Yeah. 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 It was still very much, yeah, it was just not something that there was a lot of recourse for. And even when the system changed and like you could get a restraining order, you'll find that the statistics show that more women died or more women were killed with restraining orders than without. So um, it's been a very uh, slow change, slow evolution over the years. Um, and the I mean, like, and we can get into it a little bit more, but like I've often thought about just how much not having um like a relationship with one's father, like how that affects us as women, like how that's affected me in my
Absolutely.
in my relation, how has it affected my sisters. So like in a very narrow, like there are people who don't who think about things very narrowly, and they look at me and they say, well, that's why you're gay. It's like, well, no, that's not why I'm gay. It's but I will say that in my family there are 5 children. And I'm I'm going to say this as gently as possible. Not a single one of us has been able to have a long-term healthy relationship. Not a single one of us. So I'm not misspeaking. I'm sorry, Taylor. I know I lost you for a second, but I was saying there are 5 children in my family. There were 5, and we're all grown now. And not a single one. I have 2 sisters and 2 brothers. I'm the gay one, okay, but not a single one of us has been able to have a long term healthy relationship, whether it through marriage or whether living with a partner for a long time in a healthy, long term relationship. No, that has not happened for any of us. So I think that so I'm not the only one who experienced trauma. I know that a lot of my money in earlier years went towards therapy because I was the one in the family who chose talk therapy. None of my other siblings went that route. I did. But I was able to stay off medication for anxiety and depression. So I was never on any medication. I can't say that's true for my siblings. So I chose one route to deal with my trauma and the history in my family. How am I going to deal with this trauma? And that's how I dealt with it over the years. So I know that I'm much better off because of the therapy, but having long-term committed healthy relationships has also been a struggle for me, and it's something that I've had to look at very closely. And I cannot say that these events and this trauma from childhood has not had an impact. It has. So I continue to heal from that, and from the absence of a real relationship with my father. So when I was preparing this, and I was doing the little promo thing, I found John Mayer. I like John Mayer. I like his music, and when that song, Fathers, then when he put that song out, I was like, right on, dude. Thank you for being so insightful. Thank you. And I hope there are a lot of young fathers who are taking heart um, in this song. And one of the things that I will say that makes it sad, even as I get older, even through the years, and there's more and more distance between my life and that trauma at 11 years old, one of the things that still kind of makes me it's a very conflicted experience that I have when I see fathers of all ages, young fathers, older fathers, having really wonderful, beautiful relationships with their daughters. Sometimes you see it on YouTube, there's cute videos, or you'll see it out when you're in, and I think that makes me emotional. That makes me emotional when I see that. I want to just say, I want to go up to them and say, thank you. Thank you so much. And I can't even talk about it now without getting emotional. But like when I see that, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to them for setting their daughter up for
To be
that,
loved, right?
to be loved and to love and to have healthy relationships. Thank you. Thank you so much. Because I know what it feels like to be absent of that for my entire life. So, so when my father died, I was really, I was upset and emotional, and people thought, oh, she's really going to miss her father. It's like, no, that's not why I'm crying. I'm crying.
You're missing out.
I never had him. I never had a real relationship with my father. And so that it will always be something that I care. You can't, there's in the
For
sadness.
more, you were also mourning the relationship that you never got,
Right.
that you ever so desperately deserved, but was never given to you by him.
Right. And I don't know. I mean, in all fairness, I don't think he was capable. That's what's so sad. He wasn't capable. He was a troubled man. He was not well. He was not well. And I understand this. He was a troubled man. He was not well. He didn't have, it's interesting because he wanted to make children, but he didn't really want to raise them. So he wanted to have children to say that he had children, but we were more his property, like his wife was, but he didn't really want to spend money on food to feed us. He begrudged, having to take us to the doctor. Everything was like, why do I have to pay for this? It's like, you're the provider, so there wasn't really a sense of having been provided for or having been protected, like those essential things that you get like that are so valuable when you're growing up. I am provided for, I am protected. There was not. So those were kind of like fundamental things that were missing, and that, you'll never, it's kind of a loss that you have to live with for the rest of your life, and you kind of make peace with it along the way. And I'm not,
Really?
yeah, I mean, like after the event, and when I was 11 years old, uh, I remember my mother has told me the story because I completely blocked it out. I was so traumatized that I went to school and I was a conscientious student, and I think about this with my students too. I was a conscientious student, but for the weeks that followed that event, the New Year's Eve beating of my mother, for the weeks that followed that event, I was not functional in school. Like I just sat in my chair and looked out the window and I did nothing. And honestly, I don't know. I don't remember this. I don't think I was in my body. I don't know where I was. I have no recollection of this. I only know this because my mother told me that she had been called by my teacher and had to go in and meet her. And my teacher said, Patty's a very, very good student, but since the holiday break, she has, I don't know what's wrong with her. She just sits and stares out the window and she hasn't done any work. So what's going on? And my mother had to tell my teacher what happened. She had to share that with my teacher, and of course my teacher couldn't. There wasn't much my teacher could do about that. But it was like this. That's kind of the impact that it had. I was literally not. I don't know where I was for weeks. I don't know where I was. I was checked out, completely checked out. I have absolutely no, I have recollection of the night it happened. I remember that, but I do not remember the weeks that followed when I was completely checked out of school, like not there. So I find that really interesting. That's like a, pretty standard response to trauma, I think, is to be,
Absolutely.
yeah.
My most traumatic childhood events happened when I was about the same age, and I ended up having to repeat the grade because my want and care for living was gone, essentially. And at 12, because of my upbringing, I already knew that I could numb myself with, alcohol and drugs, because it is what I had learned in my home.
Yeah.
Because my mother was the addict. And so I just remember, being completely checked out. And, thankfully that guidance counselor, those teachers that we speak of that kind of come and rescue us from the brink, hopefully.
Yeah.
He had my mother Baker acted, because I came home with a straight A report card and my mom was overdosed on heroin.
Yeah.
And,
So there,
it was just those were the times that I was done. I mean, I still can't talk about it.
yeah.
Those are the reasons that, I am the way that I am today. And I feel the same way. I lost my mom at 25, but I still, I feel remorseful, but I feel bitter. A beautiful mother and daughter relationship. And it's not, it's a trigger of trauma in me.
Yes.
But it almost is a bitterness. Like, this is not fair. So I totally relate to you when you say, like, you want to walk up to that dad and just be like, thank you for doing your part. Yeah, I'm grateful. I had a stepfather who stepped up and loved me, the way I deserved to be loved, and was steadfast in my life and the one piece of constant that I had. And so I'm eternally grateful for him. Had I not had him, I think that's why I got into a serious relationship at such a young age. It was like, I need a man that's going to stand in my life and protect me from this. And I've been in this relationship for 20 years because I found him and then I never let go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but I think that relationship was kind of, a soul level destined in a way, like, I think you and Pat had made that agreement before you even came in. Yeah.
Time, and then we got to do this.
Yeah.
Totally. These little guys in and do this. So I think you spent your entire life trying to forgive your father. I think there were conversations that never happened with your dad that you wish had. So when he was gone, we just leave with no warning. It's a different way. There are different ways that you go. And when you go like that, unannounced, there is something left to be desired, especially from your children. And because I feel like you needed that conversation with him.
Yeah.
Desperately.
Yeah. Yeah. And it never, it hadn't happened, and it never would,
because his pride or non-acceptance of his past actions.
You mean it? In other words, are you asking me, like, why it wouldn't? Oh, what was
from having that conversation with you?
Oh,
or your siblings?
I think that I had moved away. So I was living a very different life. I had moved away from my family. There was the whole situation with my sexuality and not feeling like I was fully accepted anyway because of my sexuality. So I was living in New York and kind of not really as connected with my family. And so I went home less frequently. And so in the meantime, life continued on in Springfield, and my father was making amends with different members of the family. I just wasn't around for that. And I'm not, you know, um, so we never really had that kind of conversation or those kind of opportunities that perhaps my other siblings had, as in his later years, in his the last few years of his life when he was really making those efforts. I just wasn't around. I was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and um, I don't know how willing I was to really engage in it anyway, at that time. So if he was still alive today, it might be a different story. But uh, you know, it kind of went the way it went, and it ended suddenly, and there was a lot. It left a lot of things unsaid on the table. So
Yeah.
on both sides. On both
Absolutely.
sides. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's Mother's Day. It's yeah, it's it was a hard story to write. And what's really interesting is this story, which was so hard to write. Actually, I earned a New York Times fellowship in creative writing from this story. This story got me a fellowship in creative writing from the New York Times. So sometimes the things that are hardest to write are, you know, some of our, it's gold. It's, gold on the paper. So just
And
kind of
gold,
a gold for the soul.
because I think that this still pains you to read and talk about and go through, because this story was so healing for you to write. You had to get this. I mean, even the irony of it happening on Mother's Day
Yeah.
made you feel this omnipotent, I have to write this.
I have to write it. Yeah. Yeah. It was important. So you want to open up, see if other folks want to share what they are. Yeah,
Absolutely.
because I honestly think that the folks who are with us today have stories that they would like to share. So, um, who'd like to start us off? We're kind of opening this up so people can share.
So I definitely can sympathize on a couple or empathize on a couple different levels with all of that. Like I have not had, the best luck with father figures in my life, but I think when I made peace with, it's different for some people, and some people, like when I was a kid, I thought it was my failure,
Mhm.
this lack of relationship, or it was something I could do, and I would flail to do whatever, or try to please, or suffer through things that just felt like death to me, to get like a glimpse or a second of, somebody saying, "Oh, my daughter," um like that was all so important then, that when I finally made peace with, I just have to be happy with what I have, and know that even though there's a lot of expectations in the world, not all of those expectations are things that people can live up to. We don't all have the same resources, and we don't all have the same environment. And it is so beautiful to see it when other people have it, and you always kind of go through these like withdrawals of like, man, I really wish I had that but you have to make peace at some point that you don't need that's other people's expectations on that, and that's what made you feel like you were missing it to begin with, was other people's experiences and relationships. And like, I have a shirt that I wear all the time that says, "This is what a great dad looks like." And it's my shirt, because your father can be anybody in life, really, and you can have more than one father, and all of them can suck, you know. But the people that live up to that title, might not necessarily be the rest of the world's expectation of what that role is.
Mhm.
Like, and we joke since Nidus is little, we call me the mamda, you know,
Mhm.
because sometimes you gotta be a mom and a dad, and sometimes when you're a kid, not having a dad, you feel like you gotta do certain things, to fill that void for your family, and really you just need to be you, and the things that you can fight for in your relationships and in your loves and in your family and in your friends are the things that you move forward with, but you can't look at every lost situation or missed situation as, as that, because there was a reason that you didn't need it. There was a reason that it didn't need to be that way. It can be beautiful for other people, and some people suffer, but it's okay. You make your suffering. I feel like, like we make our suffering by what other people tell us we should have. And
Mm.
at the end of the day, we have everything that we need,
Mm. Mhm. I believe that. Yeah.
It's like
So
our tracks. We came here, just maybe we came here knowing what we were signed up for,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
we made, and it's not until, like you said, our lives, the lives of others, and the upbringing of others, that it makes us feel inferior, when in fact we knew from the beginning, like, I choose a difficult path, or I choose a different path.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I've felt like every moment of the things you were explaining, feeling when you're a kid, like I felt like that, I can definitely relate to wanting to live up to somebody's expectation, or to get somebody's acceptance, that I shouldn't have to get their acceptance, and going through hell and still not ever being good enough to even have one real, relation. And it's really crazy is, like, I think the first time my biological father ever came to visit me and my sister was on Mother's Day, in 1997. My mom was pregnant, and he just showed up at her house with her new husband. It was a mind for everybody. Like, you
Yeah.
just, I mean, and my mom was like, she just let us go with him that day, and he's like introducing us to our new mom on Mother's Day, like, oh, let me
Mm.
bring you to the kids you don't know you have, and taking that from my mom, and my mom was just like heartbroken, but my mom was humble enough to be like, they never ever see him. It had been like years, like 6 7 years, since we saw him, and it just had to be like that, like it always worked. My dad got married on my birthday and lied to me when I went out, like, the 11 years mark, you know, as it was like 6 years and then another 5 years went by and it had been like 11, you know, years total and like separation, you know. And I went out to visit and they had me watch my siblings and said it's our anniversary and it's in the middle of summer and I'm pretty sure it was the 4th of July, which is my mom's birthday, you know. And
Mhm.
and you know and as I'm babysitting, you know, like I'm like, oh well, they're on their anniversary and my one sister says it's not their anniversary, their anniversary is in February by Valentine's Day. And I was like, what do you mean? You know, and that's how I found out that they got married on my birthday. I didn't, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? So like the absence of, and then when it appeared, it just like sucked even more, you know? Like Juno came out and Juno, she was like, oh, my dad lives out in blah 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 Nevada with his, you know, new wife and their 6 replacement kids. That's like my life story. You know, like
Mhm.
I was like, this is gonna be a great movie. You know, when I went into labor, I said, Thundercats are go. Like, but I mean, you know, it'll be what you make it, I
Mhm.
guess. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
like so. I after knowing him too, you know, like when I was younger and I didn't really know him and I couldn't really see through the window pane, you know, because I'd always been outside. Like couldn't really see, you know, and so I thought I was missing out on this like heroic, you know, awesome everything. And he's like I guess he's a pretty good dad to everybody else, you know, like I mean, but when I did finally glimpse in, I was like, you know, maybe I didn't really miss out on much,
Mm.
you know. Maybe I'm not really missing out on much. And maybe I just told myself I was missing out on a shit ton for too long.
Mm. Yeah. Or we're kind of, we miss out on this idea that we have, this ideal that we may have or these hopes that we have about what we can have with a father or even a mother. And often, the reality falls, falls short of those ideas. I wanted to just see if Robin or Rose would like to share a little bit before we wrap up today's live stream.
Um, I'm deeply touched by today. And I'm not sure I could speak actually,
Okay.
but I'll try. Because how this is affecting me is I can bring to this a generational perspective.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
because I was born into Italian immigrants, but my father wasn't. He was not Italian. He was Bohemian and Irish. But I grew up with my grandmother from Italy and Little Italy. It was the dominant culture.
Yeah.
In my life, my father wasn't necessarily the mean one. It was my mother. And the Italian women who were just fierce, some mean people, some of them really. And I never felt safe. I never felt safe because who the hell knew what was going to jump off?
Mhm,
But what's killing me is something that Taylor mentioned. So my son was born when my ex-husband and I were living in the East Village. And my ex-husband was a dope fiend and I dabbled in dope a lot. I couldn't shoot it because I'd pass out and people would be like, why are we wasting that dope on her? She just passes out from the needle. So, I would blow it, but was with a bunch of, so Taylor, my son grew up in that. And that's so painful for me to say. So what I'm realizing is that I didn't know how to make him feel safe because I never felt safe. And really the safety we had was in dope, to be quite
Mhm.
honest with you.
It's true. And true for my mother. Abused by the same man that abused me.
Mhm.
She was so broken. And even at
Mhm.
age, I understood that. And in her death, I have no blame for her.
Mhm.
Knew that she had to be numb. I don't know about you, but my mother was a functioning addict.
We
So
were too. We
my
were too.
Could wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and breakfast was made, lunch were in the lunch boxes, but
Mhm.
full of vodka, was going to take a shot or go smoke some crack before I got out of school.
Mhm.
And that was just what it was. But I think the hardest part for me growing up was living on that roller coaster of just never knowing what I was coming home to, which mom I was going to see when I got there. And I watched her struggle to be sober. It was almost as bad as seeing her on her worst highs. So there came an understanding, there was a time that I also reached out to drugs to help me be numb, to hide from my brokenness. And my mother looked at me one day and I snorted coke. I did a lot of coke. I was a bartender. It was part of the life.
Mhm.
Um, she looked at me one day and she said, soft is the same thing as hard. And I was it was accusing me of doing the same thing that she was doing.
Mhm.
You're doing the same drug, and at a young age, I did drugs with her. But looking back now, she was warning me, like, you're following in my footsteps.
Mhm.
So, and I was triggered by that to clean my shit up and get my shit together. But I don't know what your relationship is like with your son now. I just hope that there's been some healing and understanding in his life as well as yours. I think that you should beat yourself up for something that that's what you had to get by.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between beating oneself up and feeling the pain of it. I'm just feeling the pain of it. I don't
Yeah.
beat myself up for it. And then I cleaned my act up and left my old man and took him into the movement.
Mhm.
Patty and I have similar paths in New York. We were in different movements. I took him into the white support group of the Black Panthers, And what I realized, he was attacked by the Klan at 8 years old. He really was. He was in a van that was overturned by the Ku Klux Klan at a rally. Yeah. And what I'm realizing is that what the job of a trusted adult is to make who's ever trusting them feel safe and worthy of that trust.
Right.
And that is so hard when you haven't felt safe
Yourself.
Yeah.
You're supposed to teach something that you had, right?
Exactly.
Correct.
And that's what
So I
you will.
watch it generationally. I
Yeah.
watch it with me and my son, and now my son and his daughter.
Mm.
And it gets better. We're all works in progress. I believe we chose where we were born. I really believe that. I believe we chose our parents.
I do too.
Me too.
Yeah, for whatever karma or we're supposed to be working on in this lifetime.
That's right.
So I embrace the struggle of it.
Mm.
But it's painful to realize, Patty, that our relationships are so affected. And, all we can do is keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
In awareness,
So,
and be aware of our healing, and know that healing is a process. It may be an ongoing it may be a process we engage in for the rest of our lives, but to kind of keep moving along that road of healing. And I also wanted to say that one of the things that I've heard Taylor say, even though her mother was a drug addict, and there was some, you know, horrible things associated with that, it didn't one thing that struck me about Taylor's mom is that she loved and adored Taylor. And it was,
Mm.
even though there was trauma associated with this growing up in a household where it was so uncertain and so chaotic because of the drugs, there was one thing that Taylor was certain of, and that was that her mother loved and adored her and accepted her. And that was never in question. And I think that there are children who grow up in other places that do not have mothers on drugs who don't get that.
Mhm.
And so I imagine, Rose, you were that kind of mother where your son knew that you loved and adored and accepted him. And so that is invaluable, you know. So I wanted to just say that because um you know, there are just a lot of us who have grown up, you know, in different circumstances where it was kind of always in question. Am I loved? Am I accepted? Am how does my mother feel about me? I don't know. Whereas I don't think, I'm just guessing, Rose, but I don't think your son ever questioned how you felt about him.
Never. You're right, Patty.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
he's a
love
pretty
heals
and he's a pretty
everything.
cool white guy, which is a lot to be said too.
So good
Love,
job, Mom. Good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
love heals everything for sure. For sure. When I did start like mending my relationship with my biological father, I mean, you know, it's just like a hey here or there, you know. But he said to me one day, you know, well, what do you need me to do? And I said, well, just love me, you know, just
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
be a dad, you know, like be there when you're supposed to be there, you know. And I said about anybody who has a relationship with my son, if you're gonna be in his life, you have to be in his life, you know, and that's it, you know. There's no broken promises, none of that, you know. If you're supposed to be here, you fit in and you want to be here, you know, and vice versa. He'll want to be with you, but there's not, you know, there's not that, you know, and that's it, like with that with him, you know. So that way there's just not that up in the air feeling, you know, I always had. But I always give him a chance to be that guy, you know, too. Like as bad as things were when I was before he left, you know, it was really abusive and stuff. I had a situation similar to Patty's where I was, you know, 4 years old, shaking my mom back and forth, Mama, wake up, where he had, you know, knocked her unconscious and drug her into the bed. And I didn't know if she was alive or dead as a little kid, you know. So I mean, but I don't, you know, that was just then, you know. And yeah, there was drugs involved, there was a lot going on, you know, like and although I'll never give him the opportunity to do the same thing again, you know, like I you know, give him a fair chance to offer love, you know, or a relationship, or you know, something more than just hey, how you doing, you know. And no more empty promises, you know. Don't tell me you're sending me something, you know, like a letter, you know, and I wait by the mailbox half my life, you know, for that letter to come and it doesn't, you know. Just be real and give what you can, you know, but be honest about what you can give, you know, at the same time. And know that love heals all things, you know. So when love is present, you know, it repairs all of the stuff from the past, you know. But those people have to be willing to accept, you know, where they're at and offer love, you know, and not be worried that, you know, it's just going to be, you know, you can't offer false love, you know, and
Yeah.
expect it to be reparative, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And
I
okay.
have such a point there. I see it with my husband too. He was the mistress's son, and so his father had a family with 5 children, and so he was never accepted and with those siblings. And he was the one that waited on the porch step for his dad to come and, yeah, I'm gonna come take you to this baseball game.
Mhm.
Never.
Move until it was fucking dusk outside and he never showed up, you know?
Yeah.
So I've watched him, you know, we've been together our whole lives, but I have watched him become a man, become a father, and then like make the opposite choices to just be
Angels.
present. I think that
Mhm.
him being a father, me being there, I think that it healed us. It
Yes.
made we be,
Angels in the outfield.
Yes.
yeah, we became what we.
Yeah. Yeah. So he has gone through a similar process as you, as a father, as a parent. So
Yeah.
you have both. It's really fascinating how you and Pat's parenting journey have is a parallel healing process that you've both been on together.
Yeah, because at one point we're like, how do we, you know, with our first son, like, how do we
Mm.
be something that we never had? How,
Mhm.
but it was all through love. It was through love and this knowing that, like, I just didn't want my kids to sit on a stoop. I didn't want my kids to
Mm.
wait for mommy to. I didn't, you know, want my kids hiding under a table while we got physical. I did for my children,
Yeah.
and not saying it's easy, by no means is it, but it's just a dedication that I have given my life to make true.
Mm.
When
Yes.
I
But
was a kid, there's this movie that came out. It was Angels in the Outfield or whatever. And
Oh,
I remember thinking this like such my life, you know, like because like this kid, you know, desperately wants his dad, you know, and his dad just doesn't have the time, you know, doesn't it's not where he's supposed to be, you know. And the kid spends, you know, his whole life like fighting to like get back to his dad. He's in a foster home and stuff. And he says to his dad, "When you coming home, Dad?" And his dad says, "When the Angels win the pennant," you know. And it's like a funny movie and a sad but empowering movie. But he says, "When the Angels win the pennant." So then all of a sudden, you know, these angels show up and they're helping the Angels win the thing. And in the process of all this kid realizes like he has this beautiful family that he's just grown from nothing, you know, and all these people that fill that need for, you know, his acceptance from his dad, you know, completely and wholly. And the Angels win the pennant, dad comes back, the kid's all famous. The kid's like, I don't even really, you know, need that anymore. I realized along this whole journey, you know, that I have all of this, you
Mhm.
know, but that is what led me to get here, you know? Like, so that was like really cool to me.
That's a great.
that movie
Uh,
theater.
Listen, I
My
wanted to.
relative.
I wanted to give Robin a chance to weigh in here on the topic before we wrap up. I was telling Robin that we talked a few days ago, and I was saying, "Oh, Robin, I felt so bad you didn't get a chance to talk in our last in our last show, which was an awesome live stream. So nice to see you, Robin. Did you want to share? I think you're muted. There you go.
No, last week worked out really well because I had unexpected company.
Mm.
So we listened to it and we made plans to share together. She can't wait to read your book. And she's a local teacher. So she has so
Nice.
much to offer last week's that we're going to have a discussion about that separate. I'm
Good.
really looking forward to it. But regarding this week, that was such a powerful chapter to read. I wasn't even sure it was going to be safe for me to read. I skipped it the first time when you first gave the book, and I started to fly through it. I saw the headline and said, "Nope, just skip this chapter. Go on to the next one." So I did that. Then I saw that was I found out late last night that was this week. So it really pulled on our heartstrings here at the house. It was, like I said, really powerful. I'm gonna go inside just a second.
But we can see how beautiful it is out in here in Florida. Seeing Robin in her backyard with her shades and the palm trees blowing and the sun shining. It really is a gorgeous day.
No control over the audio out there, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
So
true.
you never
Okay.
know what you're gonna get in Lake Worth. You might get a siren, you might get a bachata, you might get a fireworks. There was a diesel truck there, so we're in a quiet space now.
All right.
It did. This was the first chapter that made me cry. And it really showed so much about who you are as our friend, you know, outside of a lot of people. I would imagine most people are going to read this and not know the personal details of who you are. But reading about that aspect really was so insightful. And it does really shape things. And it said a lot about your role as a caretaker. Like you running to mom, your dad in the situation. Like we all know you to mom everyone, you know, we know that about you. Like, and I'm one to do it too. A lot of women do it. A lot of people do it. You mom people when they need it.
Excellent.
I know keep breaking it up. Like sometimes you gotta be a mom, sometimes you gotta be dad, you know, and you have to put on different hats all the time. Yeah. For all kinds of different situations.
True
But
story.
it said so much about who you are, you know, and I just thought it was really telling, you know, and also how you did not look at your mother. You wouldn't go in the room where she was healing for that week. You just wouldn't let your little self look at that. Yep, that we're not doing that. No,
Yeah.
we're gonna look out the window all week at school. Like your brain does that on its own.
Yeah, actually, I
Yeah.
couldn't even at that age, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't look. I couldn't look at her. And I actually for many years I felt very guilty, very conflicted and kind of guilty about that, Robin, because everybody else had gone into the room, but I had not. I couldn't.
Because it's unacceptable.
Mm,
It's unacceptable. And you knew that.
mhm.
And yet you weren't going to be able to escape that. So that's how you do that.
Yeah,
It
you
also-
can't
You know,
you can't
job,
unsee
so-
it. Say that again. Was that you,
Mhm.
Andy? I'm sorry, I didn't.
It wasn't your job to heal her as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting that you still held that guilt, you know? It wasn't your job to help your father in the bathroom either,
Yeah.
but
Mm.
but you almost had a love for him that was, you know, I think that you didn't stand by your mom in that moment because maybe you were a little mad at your mom too for accepting it. You know, at
Mhm.
I don't
11 years old, I
know.
think we're going through all of it.
Mm. It's
Yeah.
it's
How old were you? You were 11?
I was 11. Yeah.
Yeah.
Young.
So was there anything else, Robin, about that? What in particular made you emotional? You said you were emotional.
Oh, yeah. Oh, your mom crawling through the, you know, and just the whole, I mean, I've experienced domestic violence in my life and gosh, at so many ages. And and as a toddler even I was abused, so physically in anger by my mother.
Mhm.
And so and then what's crazy is like my mom was made my dad the bad guy.
Mhm.
So it's a real unique perspective, but it was hard to read it without going back to your own stuff. I had to reread it again even. But the picture you paint, like I said, it really did pull on the heartstrings. But more than anything, for me personally, because it made my husband cry. So his was that it reminded him of his dad in different ways.
Mm.
And
Mm.
and also my dad making amends too, you know, Because as you grow up, kids always figure out what the truth is.
Mhm.
You know, once you
Mhm.
have a grown up mind to look back at the situations that your child mind had not yet had the capacity for,
That's
you
right.
know, that you can see who cares, you know. I literally laughed out loud when you said, I don't know how my mother feels. Because for me, I know exactly how my mother feels. She hates me. She hates me. I mean, she'll do anything to ruin. I mean, she just, we're clear on how she feels, you
Mhm.
know. My dad, and you said adores me, you know, and it's lovely. And you can just see it, you can feel it, you know, and
Absolutely.
whatever apology he made or whatever amends he made, apparently, you know, you felt that as well. And I think when you were pointing out with such seriousness how none of your siblings, all 5 of you, did not stay in long-term successful relationships, it's you know, for me, I just heard them saying no, you know, nope, not doing this, just like how you're not going in the room. Nope, we're not doing this.
Mhm.
We're not going to go down this road. You know
Mhm.
that there's a pattern, you know that there's a history, a precedent's been set. You can't, you
Mhm.
know, you don't have to go in there to see it. You don't have to know that, you know, wait for the bad stuff to happen. You see it,
Yeah.
and it's not happening. So I really resonated with the looking out the window as well. I spent most of my elementary looking out the window. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
it's how you deal with it. But it's so beautiful too to look at how the mind protects you and gets you to
Yes.
that safe place, you know.
Yes. Yes.
So
I
the divorce
agree.
part too was really big.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Mm.
I've lost years of my
also,
life to blackout astral travel.
Yeah.
what's that about astral travel?
I've lost
Yeah.
years of my life to blackout astral travel. Years.
Well, I wanted,
And you got to smile to show for it, you
yeah.
know.
Uh, I wanted to, and you know, yeah, this live stream has been really, really special for me, you guys. And I appreciate and love every one of you for helping me along my healing journey, because my healing journey has not ended. It continues. And I feel blessed to have all of you as part of that journey with me. So thank you. And those like Ashley and others in the quiet one who are also present in a quiet, attentive way. Thank you so much. And as always, Taylor, you know, I adore you. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to share with folks before we let you go. There's that Anoki and Taylor and Robin and I, because of last week was so powerful because we were talking about, oh my God, so emotional. We were talking about trusted and treacherous adult. We were talking about abuse. Some of the things that we're talking about this week, and it was so lively and so rich. We realized that perhaps we needed an ongoing setting to, you know, create an environment for that to happen outside of outside of Wildflowers. And so we are currently putting together a monthly opportunity for but in particular women to get together and talk about some of these experiences in a safe place, in a safe space, to continue our personal healing. And so we will be letting people know. We're going to kind of get together first, and then we'll be inviting people, because this will be kind of a private Zoom meeting. But we would love to extend that and have that opportunity once a month with those who would like to participate. Um, so
We
that's
should have
that.
a Zoom meeting about the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, we're gonna have we're gonna have a Zoom meeting about the Zoom meeting. We have to do that first, and then we'll,
Zoom in all over the place.
yeah, we'll have another announcement next week to kind of let people know when that's happening and so forth. So, and I also just just so people know, my website is pattyluciawrites.com. That's the best place to buy my book. And if you are interested, I just set up, I do have a YouTube station, Patricia Lucia Author, and that has these live stream recordings. It also has other things that I do, interviews and so forth. So I ask people to hop on over there and subscribe as well. And that's it. Does anyone, any of my my speakers here have any announcements that you would like to make? Feel free.
Love you guys.
Yeah.
Wow.
Taylor,
That's all.
where are we going? Where are we going next week?
Right. So I fought with this one a little bit, and maybe you can help me decide. So I'm
What?
stuck between China,
Mhm.
because you know it's juicy. It's so juicy.
I know it's juicy. It's juicy. It's another
Even
juicy
Rose
one.
Juicy.
So juicy. Okay.
And I'm blushing. And Dharma.
Or
And Dharma,
Uh-huh.
between Taina and Dharma? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Mm.
I'm gonna have to have a conversation with someone about Dharma.
Okay.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that, I could get someone else to
I couldn't-
participate. You're gonna,
Yeah.
but at any rate, so yes, go ahead.
That's where I'm at.
That's where you're at. Taina
where I'm
or Dharma? Do I have to decide right at this very moment?
No, I just thought maybe we could ask the girls.
Okay. All right, let's ask the girls. Anyone?
What do you guys?
What do you guys-
Dharma.
Dharma. Rose, what do you think?
Taina.
Okay. Robin, what do you think?
Oh, I vote China.
Okay.
I'm ready for yeah. And then it'll give you a chance to go with
We can iron out.
We're iron out
What's
some of
that?
the details for Dharma. Yeah.
The special
your guest.
guests.
That's a
Yeah.
special dharmic guest. Right. So yeah, might need a little time on that. All right. So next week it's Taina. It is about a closeted relationship with a woman who is a Seventh-day Adventist. So I happen, and this is what I mean. These are my patterns. I fell in love with what was I thinking? I fell in love with a woman who was a Seventh-day Adventist. I don't regret it. It's just that it wasn't, it was a relationship in the closet, and so it was beautiful and tragic at the same time. So we'll get into that, and as Taylor says, it's pretty darn juicy, and it has some wonderful descriptions of New York, upper Manhattan, some places. So if people are from New York or familiar with New York, some of these descriptions will resonate. So yeah. We'll do that. I know Rose is is nodding her head because I know she has talked about how much she loved those
Amazing. It's amazing.
the descriptions.
I mean, I looked at Inwood Hill Park every day from my window.
Yeah,
Walked
Wow.
it every day.
yeah. So did I. It's so funny.
know.
Paths cross in mysterious ways, don't they?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, on that note, I want to thank all of you so much for joining me again for another Wildflowers live stream. You guys are awesome and much appreciated, and I love you all so very much.
Love you, love you, love you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.